Viewers, welcome to the Personal Injury Law Show. This is a show that talks about everything current in the law of personal injuries and how it affects you today. My name's Tony Carbone. I'm a personal injury lawyer with over 25 years experience. With me tonight I've got a partner in a law firm in transport accidents, Don Maffia. Good evening, Don.
Good evening, Tony. Good evening, viewers.
And a lawyer come marketing guru, Vivian Ryan. Good evening, Viv.
Hi, Tony. How are you? Hi, viewers. Don.
Viewers, tonight we've got a riveting show that brings you up to date in relation to transport accidents. And one of them's a very interesting case that was decided in New Jersey involving texting, and it affects every one of you. So you have to stay tuned.
But first, Tony, let's talk about what's in the news.
Don, there's this sensational story in England. Bus crash for cash gang staged fake accident with 26 friends on board, arriving in agony, and Viv, 7 people didn't know what the fuss was all about. Tell us a bit about it, Viv.
Well, apparently a con man set up a faux bus accident in order to claim insurance monies. They even had one of the passengers run down the aisle of the bus and knock his head against the windscreen.
He headbutted the windscreen.
To make it look as realistic as it possibly could. Don, you find this really comical.
I think usually we say it only in the US, but this time's in the UK. It is unbelievable. So there's 26 people, 27 people in a bus, all in it. The bus driver is in the scam. The driver in the car in front that they hit from behind is all in the scam. And the idea is just get money out of it.
But you know what the best part about it was, Don? 26 of them were carrying like 2 more watches.
So ambulances arrived.
In pain, and 7 of them were looking around going, what's going on here?
What really happened? There was just a little bump in the road. Like, what's going on?
I think this was seen as the biggest payday for this scammer, because it's not the first scam that he's done. This is a number of scams. But he must have got so greedy he thought, well, why not 26 at one time?
Why didn't he include the other 7? At least they wouldn't have got caught. It's just outrageous.
Oh, well, that's one way to make it.
But look, they've been obviously charged and believe convicted, and they're off to jail, I believe, Tony.
Oh,
and they have to
guaranteed.
pay back the money. So, Tony, the insurance company actually set aside £250,000 as compensation for these injured people, or supposed injured, until it came out it was all a scam.
Well, the sad thing about it, Viv, is it's going to cost more to the taxpayer having them in jail. But anyway, so be it.
Well,
and the firm was called City Claims for You. So there you go. Only in the UK.
Let's keep moving. Childcare Centre was sued after a Mike Tyson wannabe kid bit another one.
This
Viv.
is really scary.
Can you believe it?
Really, really scary. And actually quite a sad case. This 11-month-old baby was sleeping when another child approached it while it was in its cot and bit its cheek and I think its arm.
It's right eye, cheek, mouth and toe.
And actually got rushed to hospital with severe injuries. The mother's obviously devastated. She, since this incident, hasn't been able to put her child into anyone else's care, can't go back to work. So naturally she sued this childcare centre, which is located in Melbourne, and they settled out of court. Now, obviously the childcare centre came to some arrangement. The mother was claiming that they breached their duty of care. But I mean, in this circumstance, it was called to question the childcare operators weren't adequately supervising the sleeping child. But these sorts of incidents, perhaps not to this extreme, happen quite frequently, kids biting other children. And I just wonder, to what extent can you foresee that this can occur and what can you actually do?
I mean, if your kid's a biter or not. Also, how did the kid, when they're sleeping in cots, how did this child get into there, obviously climbed into the cot to bite the child.
We're going to
And
have
it
to get
wasn't
Moira Rayner on the show, Don.
Moira Rayner is involved
it's
in
also
dog biting shows
Yeah.
previously.
So it wasn't just one bite; it was a number
multiple,
of
yeah.
multiple. So it went from the top to bottom, just went for the whole.
Just
like a corner
shows
on the
that
cot.
there's no supervision. That's the issue.
Look, I think, and look,
Yeah.
the learning centre was ABC, which got into a lot of financial problems. So, and it was quite a few years ago. So, look, obviously there's a lot of issues there that haven't been explained in this
The
article.
reality is there was a lack of supervision. That's
I
the
look,
be
that's
all,
right.
end all.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, they did settle this out of court, and the actual compensation amount hasn't been disclosed. But putting this case aside, what sort of money could a person suing in these sorts of circumstances be expected to receive in a financial?
Well, I think it depends on the extent of for the mother's obviously a psychiatric reaction to it. So looking at the extent of it, which is quite, again, not clear in this article. But look, it depends on, I mean, if she's been on medication, treatment, maybe time off work, things like that, it can be a substantial sum.
Were we talking
you
hundreds of
wouldn't-
Could be
thousands?
hundreds of
Yeah, it depends on the nature of the injuries, whether they're permanent to the child too, Viv.
Yeah,
So,
that's
yeah.
right. And then, of course, separate to that, you have the child who may have some rights as well, if it's got scarred and all those things.
But that's something the child's still got 18 years
It's
plus
to-
3.
Yeah, that's right.
To
we've done-
actually
Yeah,
make
to
a
actually
claim.
make a claim.
It's
Yeah.
interesting.
Let's keep moving. We're on the issue of children. Viv, why are kids getting treated by chiros?
It seems to be one of those things, discussions amongst mothers that, when children are going through the birthing process, their spines are often out of alignment. The case that we're talking about here is, unfortunately, a 4-month-old was at the hands of a chiropractor and that he was being seen for a seemingly harmless injury called torticollis. Is that how
Yeah,
you
I
pronounce
can't pronounce it, Viv. So.
and unfortunately, the chiropractor broke the 4-month-old's neck, so then he was rushed to hospital. It was pretty horrific. So look, this is called to question doctors versus chiropractors. Is there a need for children to actually be seen by chiropractors at all? Given these sorts of circumstances. However, there's not a lot of evidence to suggest that this is a common issue that's arising. I think there was a report that was conducted in 2007 that showed that there were 11 cases of serious injury at the hands of chiropractors.
But having said that, Viv, the spinal surgeon John Cunningham describes such behaviour as gross breach of professional ethics.
I think it depends on who you ask. Obviously, if you ask the chiropractor, they'll be saying, yes, you need this type of treatment. Or if you ask the orthopaedic surgeons or paediatricians, they say something different.
Well, I think, when I was, not to talk about myself very much, but I think ultimately, we are given lots of different alternatives to treat our children, and I think you always need to trust your instincts and seek the advice of more than just one medical practitioner.
Just on the issue of kids, sorry, Viv, I'm talking over you. Let's get on to this caterer that was fined $55,000 over an allergy attack. Don, what are the facts there?
Well, this is where they've gone to this functions centre, reception centre.
For a wedding.
And the lady, the mother said, look, my son has an allergy, so he can't eat dairy. So this ice cream doesn't have dairy. And he was assured, the mother was assured by one of the waiters or
Staff,
waitresses,
yeah.
staff, saying that there is no dairy. And in fact, gave him the ice cream, and the ice cream was dairy, it wasn't dairy free. And this kid had an anaphylactic shock, vomiting the whole lot, got quite sick. So
Violently ill.
He was
yeah.
rushed to hospital.
So the catering or the receptionist got fined $55,000.
Which is quite a substantial amount in this circumstance, and so the mother's now stepped out and really is trying to get legislation enforced for those people who are suffering from allergies.
But Viv, the child had welts, hives, and still suffering weeks after the event.
Well, there's also trauma. There's a lot of trauma now. You would
Psychological.
The thing about the reception centre, function centres, they say that they've served, this is their comment, they served over 4 million meals in 25 years, and this is the first time anything like this happened.
Well, there's always a first
This
time for everything if you don't
Exactly.
follow protocols,
Right.
Don.
Well,
Well,
then
this-
they automatically went back to retraining all of their staff
Yeah.
after this incident. So they did take
Well,
it
they've got to be
pretty
commended
serious.
for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well, that's
After a
right.
$55,000 fine. But anyway, viewers, we've got to go to a break, so please stay tuned. After the break, we're going to talk about how texting can land you in dead set hot water. Viewers, welcome back to the show. Tonight we're going to be talking about texting and how it affects you on the road. It's an update on transport accidents. But before that, I'd like to introduce one of our special guests, Alistair Boughton, who's a transport accident lawyer at a law firm. Good evening, Alistair.
Good evening, Tony. Good evening, viewers.
Dom, there's been a recent decision in a New Jersey court that found its way all the way up to the Court of Appeal in New Jersey on the issue of texting and how you sending a text message to someone that's driving can be held accountable, which is almost an extension to the law that was announced in Donoghue and Stevenson.
So Tony, what that is that the texter right, is electronically present, so like in the car with the driver. So if you're driving, I'm texting you, right, I'm electronically present in that arena that you're in. So
what the court's saying is that if you, as a texter knows that you're sending a message to someone that's driving and you can reasonably expect them to text you back and they have an accident, you could be held liable for their accident. Give us the facts of this case, Alistair.
Well, what's happened is a young man by the name of Kyle Best, a 17-year-old driver, was driving along in New Jersey and had been involved with a number of text messages with what I believe is his girlfriend, Shannon Kalana, and his phone records indicate that he was texting the girlfriend about 60 times throughout the course of the day and about 20 seconds before a car accident. And it would appear that he's been distracted by his mobile phone and driven his car into two motorcyclists who have been severely injured.
Well, severely injured to the point where they both lost limbs.
Yeah, that's right. They've both lost limbs. They've both been severely injured and have significant pain and suffering.
Well, let me give you some stats. In America last year, there's at least 3,000 deaths related to cell phones, that is mobiles, and over 300,000 injuries due to cell phones. Now, Don, the court looked at this case very, very closely, and albeit that the injured parties sued the drivers that caused the accident, there was a proceeding against the texter.
That's right. Well, it appears, and obviously law is a little bit different, it appears that the limit of the insurance of the driver, the 17-year-old driver, was up to $500,000.
Exactly.
So obviously to access the rest of damage, because these damages for their injuries would have been quite significant, and particularly in America, you're talking a lot of money. So to get the rest of the money, so to speak, they had to go for someone else who had insurance obviously as well. And that's why they tried to go for the texter. And the law pretty much said that if the person had known that you're driving, or you know that you're just someone's driving, and you get into this texting discussion, right, the texter could be held liable as well.
Well, let me read to you what the Court of Appeal said. It said, if a reasonable inference can be drawn that she sent messages requiring responses, operative word, the act of sending such messages by itself is not active encouragement that the recipient read the text and respond immediately. That is while driving and in violation of the law. They take it one step further and say, if, however, the texter actively encouraged the driver to respond, then you could be held liable.
Well, according to the New Jersey court, that seems to be the case. If the texter has special knowledge that the recipient will respond, then the New Jersey court is saying there could be liability. I think it's a very unique situation that this would apply only, possibly only in America where they're very litigious. And the question arises, where do you draw the line though?
I'm not sure if that's correct because Donoghue and Stevenson was decided in England. And in that case there, the insurance company didn't think that Mrs. Stevenson would win her case. And in effect, what happened there, they didn't even argue the facts because in Donoghue and Stevenson, there was some suggestion that there was no slugs in the region. So they only argued the case on law. So I wouldn't assume anything, Alistair, because let's be realistic. There's a lot of accidents on the road, and I would hazard to guess that if you're putting that much pressure on the driver of a car when you're sending a message to respond, that liability could extend, which is what the Court of Appeal in New Jersey said. What do you think, Don?
Look, I think that this won't be tested in Victoria particularly. The reason why is because if you're injured in Victoria, the transport accident applies, and transport accident limits or puts a cap on the damages that's recoverable, regardless of how many defendants there are. You can have 10 defendants, your damages are your damages. The cap is for pain and suffering is 500,000. So it's not really relevant in Victoria. So that's why it sort of could be only an America thing.
Yeah, but what happens if the person that causes the accident is the one that got the text, so you're liable and you don't get picked up by the Transport Accident Commission's provisions?
I still think there's there's an element of responsibility, a big element, a huge element of responsibility on the driver not to text back. Tony, you're in control of a ton of metal, right? You should not be picking up your phone and replying to a text. And it sounds like what the New Jersey courts are saying is that there has to be this dialogue, this discussion. So it's not just, how's it going? Oh, good, I'll call you back. This is where, are you driving? Yes, I'm driving. What are you doing tonight? I'm doing this. So it's a dialogue. It's got to go on. And the texter has to be well aware that they're driving. So
I think 60 text messages, there's a bit of dialogue going on there.
Yeah.
You said that this was a boyfriend-girlfriend situation, Alistair.
Well, I think that it's a young man and a young girl, and they've had a lot of dialogue. I'm not sure that they were boyfriend-girlfriend, but they were obviously very close.
Okay. The court was talking about having a special relationship. Is that talking about the relationship itself, or is it about the messaging?
I think it's about the relationship itself and the messaging. I think that the relationship needs to be one where the person is going to respond and you know that they're going to respond.
Look, I'm starting to think that we should take a case like this to court in, circumstances where someone's been sending a text and insisting that you get a response, right? Because it's reasonably foreseeable that the person that you've sent the message to will respond and cause an accident. So, Don, I'm not as confident as you are that it won't come to Australian shores.
Well, one way I don't want it to, Tony, the reason why is because if you have a driver that we know in Victoria, they're indemnified by the TAC. So if now we can say that, say the driver admits, yeah, I was texting back because someone asked me what am I doing, I replied back and we're having this conversation, and then he's trying to alleviate himself from the liability and point to the texter who, in most cases, like in this case, won't have insurance. Where do you get your money from? Where would the plaintiff miss out?
I'd guess that if it's not picked up by transport accident law, that the house insurance policy might pick it up.
If they've got house insurance, I mean, that's we've got to make sure. But we know in Victoria that if a driver's at fault, then TSC indemnify it, and unfortunately TSC are good for the money.
Viewers, it's a very interesting topic. Send us your Twitter and Facebook comments on this one. It's one that I do want some commentary. And stay tuned, we'll be back to this just after the break. Viewers, welcome back to the show. During the break, I had an interesting email as opposed to text from Jody. She asked me this question, Alistair. She says she rings up her boyfriend all the time and he's on the road. He drives for a living. If you're going to be held responsible in New Jersey for sending a text message and expecting a response, Jody's got to be in the gun if she's on the phone 24/7 saying, Bob, whatever his name is, what are you doing, where you going?
I'd completely agree with you, Tony, unless it was a hands-free device that the boyfriend is using in the car. But in the case that somebody's on the phone, I think the special relationship is greater, and the knowledge that you have that they're going to be distracted and be responding is almost a given.
But where do you draw the line? So let's say he was on Bluetooth and they're having this great conversation, talking about dinner and what they're going to be doing and all that stuff, and he gets distracted and drives off. Why wouldn't the caller, even if he's not picking up on Bluetooth, liable as well?
Don, the thing that concerns me is this. You said it in Victoria this circumstance of where you'll sue is highly unlikely. I disagree. I'll tell you why. Jody rings up the boyfriend. He has an accident, runs into the back of a car. Let's say he lost a leg. He can't get lump sum common law damages against the driver in front because he's the one that caused the accident.
He'll have to sue Jody. This is more. I'm talking more a situation where they're not at fault. So let's say,
I'm talking about fault.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's say if I'm driving a car, a guy, touch wood, veers across the road because he's distracted because he's texting something, injures me. Yeah. Well, my damage will be recoverable from the driver.
Exactly.
I don't care the next extent.
But you're the driver, Alistair.
But you're turning it the other way.
Yeah. You're the driver. The sad thing is that you're not going to get lump sum common law damages. You're going to have to sue Jody and probably get picked up by her contents policy on homeowners insurance.
I think that's the only avenue you have to sue Jody.
Again, and that's where the courts, particularly in Victoria, Australia, have to say there is that, well, one, the duty care's owed, and two, that there was a breach of the duty because you are looking at, well, at the end of the day, you are responsible for your own safety. So you know you shouldn't be picking up a phone while you're driving.
I know, but I'm saying it comes back to the issue, why you're feeling pressure. It could be a situation where a couple are having matrimonial issues and you feel obligated to respond. Who knows?
Yeah, but at the same time, you know, particularly now, you know, if you're going to pick up your phone while you're driving, there is a risk that you'll become distracted. I mean, we've got TAC who did that big campaign on driver distraction. We've got now, which you spoke on previous episode, we've got that phone app which Vic Roads is going to spread out. At the moment, I think it's just for Android phones, but it's going to spread out to iPhones and all that. So there's a lot of education out there.
Exactly.
So you should know, any driver should know, you're driving, you pick up a phone, you're at risk of having an injury, or causing an accident, or causing significant injuries to yourself or someone else.
Well, a message I'm going to send to the viewers is I'm not picking up the phone when I'm driving, I'll tell you now. Because the expectation is you're going to respond to every call that you get. And that's the sad thing about mobile phones, guys. The advent of mobile phones meant that everyone out there expects to get you 24/7. You know, something happens, 3 a.m, bang, I'm ringing this guy.
Tony, we know if the High Court have decided many cases where, at the moment, the High Court's saying that people have a duty to look after their own safety. And to look after your own safety, it's simple as this. Do not pick up the phone while you're driving. Or look at it, or text, or do your whatnots on it.
I think we'll have to get someone from the Transport Accident Commission on this one, and we'll do that in the future. Let's talk about another interesting case. Tell us about the fellow that was in Fiji, Alistair, and got injured. Came back to Australia with nasty injuries. I think he was a paraplegic and wanted to sue the driver and the people involved, the other 2 drivers, in New South Wales.
So a New South Wales resident was holidaying in Fiji. He was a passenger in a vehicle that was involved in a transport accident, and I believe he became a paraplegic, so suffered very serious injuries. He's issued proceedings in Victoria, which is the place of residence of the driver of his vehicle.
Exactly. Now, Don, the court had to decide, does the case proceed in Fiji or in New South Wales?
In Victoria. Well, no proceedings were issued in Fiji. The lawyers issued only in Victoria.
Why would you do that?
Well, look, I don't know. I was looking at the judgment. I really don't know.
It's because I guess it's hard to fly him over, isn't it?
Well,
I mean, he's got the paraplegia.
I think it is, but you got to look at the fact scenario here, because the second defendant, third defendant, who were the driver and the owner of the vehicle in Fiji, the other vehicle, not where he was a passenger, they had insurance which only covered them if there was a judgment in Fiji.
Exactly.
And the actual insurance company actually wrote to the lawyers and said, listen, we'll pay for your client to fly over plus the attendant care that he needs to get you over. We're paying all the legal fees for the second and third defendant if you bring your case in Fiji, which they didn't do it. They still want to bring it in Victoria.
Well, as it transpires, he didn't get his wish. Can't proceed in Victoria. He's got to go to Fiji. What does the court look at in determining which is the appropriate forum, Alistair?
Well, the burden will actually be on the defendants if they want to have a stay of proceedings because it's not the appropriate forum, Tony. And the court will look at all the connecting factors and where, for example, is the law, where are the witnesses, where are they based, and where's all the evidence going to be.
Well, it's a case of what is more convenient, isn't it, Don?
That's right. So in Victoria, the courts can hear a matter applying outside law. So in this case, I wanted the Victorian Supreme Court to hear a matter based on Fijian law. So it looks at all those factors, and one of the factors which they raised, which was the instability, civil instability in Fiji, which will hinder having a fair trial. And the court said, look, you just can't say that. That's not a reason why you should be heard in Victoria.
Well, insurers are from Fiji anyway, aren't they?
Everything was in Fiji. The only connection to Victoria was the driver of the vehicle, who had no apparently still hasn't put in a notice of appearance, which means that they've got no involvement in this case as yet, and I think they don't have insurance. But the only connection was the driver was in Victoria and the plaintiff had 2 months or 3 months of treatment at the Austin Hospital.
Well, just on that issue, the other day in England, in the Thames, one of those little duck boats, that amphibious boat that goes on land and water.
I think they call it a duck boat. They call it a duck boat, yeah.
I went on one of those in Singapore. They give you a quacker. I forgot to bring it along. But what happens is everyone jumped out into the water, and I think the Thames is pretty bloody dirty anyway. So you can imagine, these people are jumping into this filthy water, and no one got severely injured, thank Christ. Where would you sue in those circumstances, Don?
Well, again, I think you have to look at, it is where is the inappropriate forum. It's not what's the most appropriate. So it's the burdens on the defendant. But if everything's treatments in Victoria, you've got all these, and these days with electronic, you've got video link, you've got Skype and all that. I mean, you could do it in Victoria. What do you think, Alice?
I think the proceedings could be issued in Victoria so long as you could satisfy service. The question is, with all the witnesses over in the UK, it may be an inconvenient forum.
Well, I think all the witnesses would be foreigners anyway in London, or as a tourist attraction.
Yeah, well, that's true. It's
going to be all over the world.
I reckon that's touch and go, that one, as to what the appropriate forum is. Don, is there anything else you want to add?
So as you can see, it's quite important you get legal advice straight away involved in these matters. So we do suggest contact a lawyer, a person injury lawyers who can advise you about your rights and entitlements.
And Alice, anything else you'd like to add?
So as we can see, it's important that if you've been involved in an accident overseas, get some legal advice, even in Victoria, because you may be able to issue proceedings in Victoria.
And viewers, remember, watch what you do when you're on the road. Don't get on the phone every 2 minutes. Stop texting. There's a lot of accidents that are being caused. Go to Facebook, go to Twitter, go to our past episodes. Stay tuned for future episodes, and don't forget to stay safe.